Okay, good morning. Hello and welcome. I am going to go ahead and get started because we have a full hour, I believe, and we also want to have some time at the end for questions. Thank you for joining us for today's Counselor Connect session. My name is Amanda Callahan, and I am the coordinator for Counselor Connect. Today's session kicks off a 3-week series with important state legislative requirements relevant to specifically to student service professionals. I will share more details about the other 2 sessions coming up at the end of today's session, along with some other upcoming professional learning opportunities that will take place throughout this school year. So I am thrilled to introduce our session for today, which is state requirements and a legislative update. And a big welcome to our presenter for today, Courtney Hott. She is the Director of Student, School, and Family Engagement for the Indiana Department of Education. Courtney, I am so glad you are with us today. And as evidenced by Counselor Talk and all of the millions of questions that we see come across Counselor Talk, I think this is a timely session. So glad to hear you have you here today, and are thankful that you're with us. Before we start, I do want to share that this session, along with most of our other sessions, are recorded and available on demand later on. So if for some reason you have an emergency, need to jump off real quick, we are recording and we'll post it within a few days. And then additionally, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to add those to the chat. I will be monitoring those, and Courtney will kind of be answering along the way. And then also maybe at the end, we'll leave some time for any remaining questions. So Courtney, I'm going to hand it over to you to get this session started, and I will stop sharing my screen so you can take over.
Great. Okay. First of all, I'm so excited to be here today. I see so many of you that I know in the audience. Is that, I guess, with a virtual call, but I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I had a doctor's appointment that ran long, and so I did not have time to get back down to the office. So I am hanging out at Clay Terrace. So I am on the road. So if for some reason there's background noise, I'm so sorry. But I think I found a quiet corner to be in. So I'm going to share my screen and get going because we've got a lot to cover. Can you guys see that okay? And my voice is good? Okay. Get going. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about 2022 legislative session highlights. Those of you that know me know that I nerd out over this stuff. It is totally my jam. And some of you tell me, thank God it's my jam, because you're not a fan of this kind of work. So the people like me are here to help you sift through it. So super excited to talk about this today. I will try my best to not go on long tangents, and I'm happy to take questions. Amanda's going to monitor the chat for me, and then I'll also take questions afterwards. And if I don't know the answer to anything, I will write it down and get back to you. So let's go. Okay, so I'm going to give you a brief overview of the bills that have passed this last session and implications that they might have with IDOE and your schools in general. So we'll just touch base on the education bills, and then any bills outside of that that maybe touch education. Some we'll spend more time on, some we'll do less, because some will be relevant to you and others won't be. So let's start with Senate Bill 2. Was a various education matters bill. We love those, right? They always have a ton of stuff in them. So it was meant to address the unforeseen issue with COVID, with the virtual and in-person instruction as far as ADM goes. So the bill requires school corporations and charter schools to report the number of students that are enrolled in the fall count day, but graduated before that spring count day. And then it also fixed the glitch with funding for ADM. So for the fall of 2020, one ADM count in determining whether at least 50% of instruction was virtual. The department is reviewing the attendance of each student in each school day. And so under the new section, if tuition support is adjusted, the DOE will settle any of the like payment issues there. So I'm not sure if many of you deal with that, but if you do, any questions, let me know. The next one we can touch base on is House Bill 1130 and Senate Bill 83. This is regarding open meetings. So there were two bills actually regarding this, and because we don't regulate your school board meetings, nor like do we intend to ever, but this is just like information that would be helpful for you all because it's a hot topic right now with everything that's going on. So it does require public comment to be available for your school board meetings, and it must be allowed before any final action is taken. It leaves the logistics up to the individual school board, which is great, and also defines charter school to for the purposes of this requirement. So that's one just kind of an FYI for you guys. And there was two bills that actually addressed that in the session. So Senate Bill 290 requires the department to do a career coaching pilot, which we're so excited about. We are looking at some models from other states, and then also working with the Student Pathways team on different career coaching piloting through the 3E grant. And we're working with Chamberlain and Dunn to really be able to analyze and like look at these different career coaching pilots and like what's working out, what's working well, and what we can do better. So super excited about that. The 290 has the second part that is regarding graduation waiver rates and pathways. So it requires the department to submit a report that's already submitted with information in the last 5 years on the graduation waiver rates. And the percent of students that graduated with each pathway. So the General Assembly wanted to review that. And the report's also posted on the website if you have any interest in reading that. There's 5 aspects to this bill. So then the third aspect of this bill is in relation to tuition support again. So it states that the budget committee has to review a tuition adjustment of $250,000 or more. At the state level, and then which doesn't really affect you guys, but just an FYI. The fourth part of the bill allows the State Board of Education to adjust the enrollment count of eligible pupils if one or more of the corporations, if the state board determines that the count is unrepresentative, or if it changes, that would be greater than 250,000. So those are just some things that maybe like your finance team would be working on, or your corporate office. The last thing is it assigns the no letter grade for the 21-22 school year as far as accountability goes. So that one kind of has a bunch of different aspects to it. If you have any questions, deeper questions about that, let me know. Senate Bill 331 is another education matters bills. We love those. I think I just lost my sound. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Senate Bill 331 was a treasurer's office bill updating the education savings account language from last year, but then there was some more information that actually dropped into it. So the amount that a school corporation spends for full-time teacher salaries includes special ed and career and technical co-ops. So before November 1st of 2022, the department had to submit a report, or will submit a report to the Legislative Council that has information on like the percentage that school corporations spend for the full-time teacher salaries, percentage on benefits, and whether or not requirements or waiver was received for these. So this kind of has to do with the new education savings account that they're trying in Indiana. It allows the treasurer to deduct the funds from the program to cover the cost of administering their programs, and the money will be deposited into the scholarship account. So it just kind of moves the money around from the education world to like the treasurer's office to manage the savings account. It removes the provision allowing the treasurer to remove 3% from the quarterly distribution. It also establishes the Indiana fund for the scholarship programs, and then it also eliminates the entity's requirement for like a bond. So not necessarily affecting you all directly, but this is something that's affecting education in Indiana, and we can talk in deeper detail about it. It's a very interesting and complex policy with the savings accounts. And we're just getting started in Indiana. So I think you'll see that grow over the next couple of years. I've definitely heard some talk of it growing. And if you're interested in like learning more about the ESAs, let me know. I'd be happy to connect you with their executive director over there. She's wonderful and just full of knowledge and has spent a lot of time in education policy, and she'd be a great connection. So if any of you have any interest in like exploring this further, let me know. I'd be happy to make that connection. So another Education Matters bill, right? 1093. So this bill contains language that kind of, it touches a bunch of different stuff, but mostly school resource officer language. It kind of defines it further so that it's just clearer. So during school hours, the purpose of the school resource officer is to provide law enforcement services, and then also requires them to complete a 40-hour training within 180 days from the date that they are assigned duties, or 365 days if the ADM is less than 1,000. So it just kind of puts some more parameters on the school resource officer, looking at like school safety and what the requirements are. The Early Learning Advisory Committee got reestablished. We call this ELAC for short, ELAC. You know, we love our acronyms. So the goal of this is to foster collaboration between DOE and early learning, so FSSA and the governor's office, and collect data and review information, and just really figure out how we can do a better job with early learning in Indiana. We've been pretty stagnant, and so expect to see some big policy changes coming out of that. I'm really excited about that. We're really looking at expanding the pre-K initiative, and just really starting younger, which we all know is just like such a great thing. So as far as like enrollment incentives, it has language regarding charter school boards and how they have to appoint a director and outline the duties for that director. So it just is like more specific with that. And then it gives, I believe it gives an enrollment incentive to the executive director. But if that language affects your school, if you're a charter school counselor, let me know. We can go more into detail on that, but I'm not going to go into that. Plus, I'm not 100% sure on that one. That one's a pretty specific language that I'm just not quite as familiar with. So the license for reciprocity is pretty exciting. So this like levels the playing field for out-of-state applicants for licensures, and it allows them to attain like an accomplished practitioner's license easier. So we're really looking at in Indiana trying to make our process for reciprocity easier, so we can hopefully encourage more educators to come teach in Indiana. This also touches the null letter grade, and it talks about how schools cannot conduct more than 3 virtual student instruction days a year that do not meet like certain requirements. So the teacher has to have directed synchronous instruction, or like a hybrid model, and it touches on the tuition reduction based on the virtual instructions and things like that. So it gets really in depth on the virtual requirements. And DOE is going to also study like some information regarding this, like the deep inner workings of like the hybrid model and this tuition reduction and things like that. So expect to see more information on that maybe this coming session, especially with it being a budget session. So yeah, this one was a pretty big bill that had quite a lot that it touched, even outside of those bullet points. So this is continued. So it limits the virtual instruction days. Sorry, I was looking at my notes and not the screen. It talks about the tuition reductions and the study of the machine scoring and the excessive education transfer dates. So it just goes into so much information. The excessive education fund transfer list has to be developed by March 1st and then notices by April 1st. So this gives your school finance team a little bit more time to like compile the list. This used to be a much closer timeline. So that should be good for them. Let's go on to 1094. 1094, some of you may deal with this. This is actually passed to address the issue of work-based learning and insurance coverage. So the premise behind this bill was that companies are weary to hire minors and do work-based learning because of insurance issues and liability. So in order to give these students like the actual real-world experience that they're looking for, they passed 1094 as a solution to this. So the bill requires us at DOE to request proposals for the do an RFP of contracting with a company to provide this and enter into an MOU and provide adequate like workers' comp and employment liability for these employers that are going to do work-based learning. And so the department's going to do that. And then the employer is responsible for the cost of the purchasing. And then last minute, there was like also a language insertion on transformation zones for collective bargaining. So that doesn't necessarily affect you all, but it would affect like the companies that are taking on the work-based learning. This also allows the governing body of a school corporation in a transformation zone to enter an agreement with a nonprofit to manage and operate all schools' transformation zones. So it really kind of opens up some language and give schools the ability to kind of be more creative and have some more innovation. But I think the biggest part of this bill that you guys will be affected by is the hope that we will see increased work-based learning opportunities because of the liability being less of an issue. Because that was just one of the biggest concerns among employers when we're looking at work-based learning. Education Matters at 1251. I like to call this a Christmas tree bill. Some people call it a catch-all bill. This one has a ton of stuff in it. All obviously education related, but it's just really kind of where a lot of language ends up at the end of session, right? So this has the micro grants language in it. So this is an exciting thing that creates an enrichment scholarship account to use for qualified expenses. And our academic team is currently developing that. So if you are interested in understanding that further, let me know. I'd be happy to connect you with them to talk about like the process and where that's at. It has language around adjunct teacher licensing. So this is around to really look at bringing teachers in that have real world experience and serving as adjunct teachers at the high school level. It just kind of adds some framework around that as far as are authorized to request background checks for these individuals and establish like online portal for teachers to teach adjunct for the classes. So like it just like opens it up to really like increase innovation and like have real world experienced people to teach our students. So we are also in this bill required to establish like an online adjunct teacher portal to post the vacant teacher positions. So this is something that Dr. Estes's team is working on to really like look at some flexibility with sharing teachers and just some creativity there. Hopefully that we could get you all some more access. Especially like I think rural communities would really benefit from that, obviously. But yeah, so that's a pretty exciting thing. Let's see. Next, we want to talk about assessment flexibility. So DOE is going to apply for assessment flexibility. Academic team is doing this. This would be for Excuse me, I'm gonna try to think of a sneeze. We're just hoping to offer more flexibility through assessments and like federal accountability requirements. So that is not my wheelhouse, but happy to get more information on that if anybody has any questions about that. The parent-teacher compacts is interesting. So you guys won't have to do anything obviously different with this, but if you're interested in following this, DOE is going to release a study on parent-teacher compacts in the state and what that looks like, what that could possibly look like for Indiana. Parent-teacher compacts are kind of a new wave of school choice. What happens in states that are looking at doing this is teachers would be able to be hired by individual families to teach their students. And the ADM that goes to the school would go directly to the teacher, and then that teacher would use that money to educate. And those teachers would be employed through the state most likely, and would probably have access to benefits, retirement, all the things that you have when you work for a school corporation, but you would be an independent person. We're not doing any of that. So like, I know it's kind of scary, and that's it's a really big policy change. They're just studying it to see what it would look like in Indiana. So if you have any interest, I've read some really cool policy briefs on this. So if you're interested in like learning more about that, shoot me an email and I'd be happy to share those policy briefs with you. Or if you just want to like chat about it, we can definitely do that. I am by no means an expert, but I have been doing some policy research on it. So that's a pretty interesting, it reminds me of almost like a homeschool hybrid. So like a family would enter into a contract with a teacher, and then they would look at the curriculum and the standards and all of that and like go through it. And it's pretty complex, but it's really interesting kind of why and the how behind it. So expect to see more about that. Let's see what else. We're going to skip the appropriate vehicle. I don't think that necessarily is something we need to focus on. State board's going to conduct a study to identify skills needed to be successful after high school. So look for updates in employability skills, hopefully coming at some point. Just to touch base on some licensing related bills. The school employee Senate Bill 115, this school employee misconduct bill adds some provisions in the code regarding hiring and licensing of individuals with certain criminal backgrounds. So it allows schools to obtain expanded criminal background checks at any time that they want to of an employee. It also requires schools to consider whether an individual convicted of offenses constitutes as ground to employ or to terminate. So it opens up that language for schools. And public indecency was added to the list of all of that. So it also changes the list of offenses where the department shall permanently revoke a teacher's license. So it edited that. Senate Bill 91 is regarded to EPP programs. So traditionally in the past, CAPE was in statute that approved teacher prep programs, and we've added AAQEP to that. So we're opening up that teacher prep program requirement or approval, so in hopes that we will get more teachers. Now we have 2 approved accreditors for teacher prep programs that are both recognized by the Council of Higher Education Accreditation. So this also includes the percentage of teachers who complete prep programs where there are 5 and 10 years after completion. So all in hopes of attracting more talent to Indiana. Senate Bill 356, also an education matters bill. It removes the requirement to receive like your initial practitioner's license, except for special education. So these individuals may not be a teacher of record for a special education student. So in addition, like they have to be 26. The age requirement of 26 is removed. And then for school year starting in June of 2022, so this past school year, a school court may provide supplemental pay to a teacher in excess of their salary for just in general, like that one's not specifically for special education. So that was just kind of like more language that tacked on there. So schools can offer more supplemental pay, and second, it removes the age requirement for special ed. That was, kind of one of those bills where lots of language gets thrown in. A little bit of higher education here that we can review. So the first bill, the Fafsa bill, you guys know all about the Fafsa bill, right? That has been coming in and out as far as like, do we require it, do we not require it? Is there going to be some kind of incentive for schools who have really high Fafsa filing rates? There's been all of that language that has gone through. Or not gone through, that has appeared. But the only thing that's really like gone through and stuck is the FAFSA notice that the CHE provides for you guys that you have to give. So this bill like updated the language on the state deadline. It must include the state deadline on FAFSA, and then we have to include a statement regarding recent labor market trends, and then they wanted a statement on there that guarantees financial options for all high school students. And then they also wanted some statements on there about like merit, need-based grants, and like other financial aid that require the FAFSA to be filed for eligibility. And then lastly, it has the website for online FAFSA affirmation form. So it just kind of like updated that notice to make it more inclusive. So I don't know if they've sent that out yet for this year, but keep a lookout for that. This bill also asks CHE to develop an online form for parents and students that are emancipated to affirm that they've received this notice and whether or not they intend to complete the FAFSA. So it's similar data collection around the FAFSA and whether or not they need help. So that way too, if they check that they need help, that someone will reach out to them and help them. CHE is going to provide information to each school that determines which students have completed both the FAFSA and the affirmation form. So CHE will be communicating with you all as well to give you information on your students in that sense. They'll probably do all of that through ScholarTrack if they have not already. And the next higher, sorry, there's a couple more. The next higher education bill, Senate Bill 89, the bill updates the education award and the freedom of choice grants to be based on federal needs calculation for families rather than expected family contribution. So EFC can be pretty complicated. So we're switching it so that it's based off of like the federal calculation. And in addition to this, the term stipend is actually changed to a scholarship. So that's just like some policy language there. The bill clarifies that the total amount of scholarships and aid a student receives cannot exceed the total amount of expenses for higher education, and the cap for the scholarship remains at $4,000. So students will not receive funding outside of the total expenses that they are supposed to have. So it caps that. The final, the last like major bill dealing with higher ed would be 1045, which just very simply increases the amount of annual credit against adjusted gross income from $1,000 to $1,500 under the 529 savings account program. So it increases the tax credit for that, which is pretty exciting. So, and then other than that, there was just the special education bill that passed it was a large special ed bill. I don't think I'm going to go into that one today because I want to leave time for lots of questions. So let's touch base real quick on the health bills. So House Bill 1001 was a huge bill that talked about COVID-19. So this bill prohibits school corporations from requiring COVID-19 passports. However, it does not prohibit entities from maintaining or creating records, like immunization records. So it will have an impact on school corporations and your hiring processes too, because this is the impact shouldn't go much past much further than that, than like the hiring practices though. So that is just something to keep in mind. The 1169 was the Health Matters Bill, and there's only like a couple of education impacts in this. The first is that it repeals the State Department's requirement to adapt guidelines concerning the safety of children in bad weather conditions, and then distributes it to the Department of Education for further information. So it updates some things like the deaf and hard of hearing language, final education impact. That the health bill has is that it requires school corporations to provide the results of all tools and assessments administered to deaf and hard of hearing children. So there's just some language that has been updated that probably won't affect your all's day-to-day, but if you ever need to dig through and find it, you can have access to this PowerPoint and it'll help you navigate that. The final bill that would be health related would be 1192, which defines school-based nurse and specifies that school-based nurse or licensed provider can participate in Medicaid as a qualified provider. So that is one thing that is always really interesting to me, is the ability for schools to bill Medicaid. And it's a pretty, I find it to be a pretty complicated process. And I know that most of the schools I've been in have also felt that way. So we actually have a Medicaid specialist at the department. And so if any of you have any interest in like figuring out if your school can benefit from filing more with that, or getting deeper into that policy, let me know. I'd be happy to connect you with her, because that could be just a really great way to be able to bill Medicaid for services that your school is providing for students. And receive like reimbursement for it. So if your school doesn't do that and is interested, let me know. I'd be happy to get you guys in touch to look at that. Just a couple other things I want to touch base on before we move on to questions. These are just some simple, short, like miscellaneous bills that passed. The first one is House Bill 1223, which is the family-friendly school designation. So this is actually moving under my team at the department, and it is establishing a procedure to conduct an assessment for the purpose of parental involvement. And so if you all get, so if like at least 10% of your students parents at your school request that an assessment is conducted, you all will have to participate in like the family-friendly schools program. So family-friendly schools designation was like an opt-in, but this kind of adds it as like a requirement if 10% of your parents request that you do this. So how you all like post that is going to be up to you, and we're going to release some guidance on this, so stay tuned for that. But we have to determine like in the way that requests are submitted. So the language is pretty broad, so we will be releasing some more language on that, but I don't foresee that to be like a huge lift for your schools, because we want the family-friendly school designation to continue to be like a really positive program and not something that's punitive. So
Courtney,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. We had a question about the Medicaid bill.
Yes.
Somebody asked if that bill was specifically for health challenges or mental health as well.
So there's been discussion around that, and I'm hoping that there's going to be some legislation that's going to include mental health next year. So keep an eye out for that. But right now, there's some pretty strict requirements on it being health related. And I'm assuming they mean like therapy costs is by the question. Right now, school psychologists can bill Medicaid, but it gets a little bit, the language is like super complicated. And so it really ends up being like a situation-based thing. So if they're asking about more of like a general mental health coverage for students that can bill Medicaid, we will hopefully see more of that coming. But right now, if they're interested, does that make sense? So it's like hopefully there will be further coverage coming. We've been working with our team and FSSA, their Medicaid team, on how that looks in the schools and how we can maximize it. But there does have to be a couple of like policy and language tweaks to make it more expansive. But if they're looking at expanding like what they're currently doing, we can work on that now. So I know that's kind of like a muddy answer, but that's policy, right? It's always super muddy and super gray. But yeah, so right now it does not include like specific mental health like counseling, if that answers the question. I'm gonna wait 1 second to see if Amanda pops back in.
She said yes. That answers the question for her.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah, no problem. Let's see, where did I leave off? Senate Bill 11, I think, is where I was. Yep. So this deals with the public displaying of historical documents that also have religious contents. So the bill lists out 4 documents: the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, Articles 1 through 4 of the Northwest Ordinance, and Washington's Farewell Address. So it talks about the public display of these documents in the schools, and it includes that the statement should accompany these documents wherever there's like a certain statement that they have to include if they display these documents. And the bill like outlines the means of acquiring these documents. It's a really strange language bill. Your history teachers may know about this, but it's kind of an interesting process. But the last bill we'll touch base on this slide has to do with childcare provided by school corporations. This is actually more FSSA relevant because it's childcare, but it impacts the schools like indirectly. So it talks about licensed childcare providers through public or private schools, and the employees in the corporation as well, like, and how like the overlap, because you have a child care provider in your school building, so you may not be hiring those people directly, but then you're in your school building. So it touches on like background checks and things like that for them. And then lastly, it requires Montessori programs to determine a child to staff ratio for that. So not a whole lot this session that like directly, sorry, I didn't change my slide, but I kept going. So my bad. There's these here if you want to look deeper into those. There's the documents one, this historical, that one's so strange. But lastly, we'll just touch base real quick on the dyslexia screening. It adds dyslexia screening to an intervention to the list of laws that apply to charter schools, as well as your highly qualified innovation schools. So it requires them to do those dyslexia screenings. And then Senate Bill 297 removes the June 30th start date for the deduction authorization, and it also makes some technical corrections to the bill for collective bargaining. This is like I know this was like pretty technical and probably kind of boring, because a lot of it really didn't affect school counselors directly this session, but there was just a lot of education language and some studies as far as like what's coming. So I just like would love to open up for the last like 20 minutes or whatever to just have like some discussions and some questions. And you know, if something pops up later, you can always email me. So I'm actually gonna take off my share screen because I would prefer to just like look at you guys while we have these discussions. And yeah. How do I stop sharing? Pause share.
Thank you, Courtney.
Stop
yeah,
share.
there
it is. Okay.
You got it.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing. I did just put in the chat, if anybody wants to add questions there, they can do that, or they can also unmute and ask a question. And really, the questions could be related to any of the bills that passed that you just shared, new legislation, Or I know there are some, I know on Counselor Talk yesterday, it was blowing up regarding questions regarding transcript requirements and other questions specific to, specific legislative requirements. So,
and I will do my best to answer those. And if I don't have them, I will either get them, or if you guys don't know, we finally hired a school counseling specialist. We have not, I don't think, I was out last week on vacation too. So if any of this like got updated, like my bad, I'm still catching up and digging myself out of my email. But Rebecca Frazier started at the department as a school counseling specialist. And we've had some weird stuff with Counselor Talk and have had a hard time getting her on there. So I don't know if she's on Counselor Talk yet.
Okay, we have a question. I sent this question to the CTE email, but haven't heard back. Maybe somebody on here knows the answer. I don't see the question. Did you add the question?
See the question.
Okay. You want to add, maybe they're adding it right now.
Oh, Michelle's on. Hey, Michelle. Maybe and you know what? If I can't answer it, Michelle can.
Wait, yeah, we're gonna just put Michelle on the spot.
No, I'm here and Rebecca's on. We're listening. So.
Oh, Rebecca, great. Hi. Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, we're here.
All of our people are here. So Michelle is not on Counselor. Okay, so do we have this CTE question, Michelle Mitchell?
I don't know if you can hear me. This is Michelle Mitchell.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I was trying to post it. Maybe I'll just read it real quick. I just said after reading the latest CTE biweekly update, I was a little confused about the Technical Honors Diploma 6 credit requirements because it didn't specifically say anything about the dual credit piece or the industry certification credential that they also have to have along with those 6 credits. So that it states on like the Core 40 with honors, that document. So I sent both like pieces because it doesn't really say that they have to have the dual credit or certification, because the reading on the form says the 6 credits and then one of the following, and one of the following is those industry certifications or the dual credits. So I just asked, like, is the dual credit piece still a requirement, or are they changing the language for that?
No, and Michelle, pipe in if you've talked to CTE about this, but there have not been any changes to the diploma as of now. I have heard that they're may be looking at some changes this upcoming legislative session. I do not know what those are, but yeah, I don't think DOE is going to operate Counselor Talk. I'll go back to that. But with the CTE stuff, I don't really know. As of now, it just stays status quo as far as the diploma requirements go. Those cannot be changed those can't be changed without going through state board and legislation. So
that's what I thought, but I was like, why did they make that statement? Because it kind of makes it look like, they're
it kind of makes it complicated, doesn't it?
That change has already happened. Like if you look at that biweekly, it mentions nothing of the 1 or 2 things that they have to also get with the 6
interesting
credits.
Michelle, if you don't hear back from them in the next week, just reach out to us and we'll work with you to try to clarify that, because
I haven't seen that on the
I haven't either.
CTE biweekly.
Yeah.
I didn't see that. But yeah, happy to.
It's kind of buried, but it was in last week's, the one that was sent out there.
Okay, I haven't looked at that one yet. Okay, we'll look into that, and if you don't hear back, please let us know.
Okay.
So with Counselor Talk, DOE is not going to take over Counselor Talk. It will stay as an outside, which is probably a good thing. And I know that might sound kind of strange, but as far as having DOE take it over, I think we want to make sure that it maintains the flexibility for you guys to be a community on there. And so I do not think Counselor Talk will be taken over by DOE, just a heads up for that, because I saw somebody ask that. Let's see. Counselor Talk. Does the nursing services for Medicaid have to be provisioned? Yes, currently it does have to be in their IEP. As far as I know, it has to go through their IEP for Medicaid. Thank you, Portia, for your sweet compliment. It's a lot of information and technical, and I always feel like I bore people with this because like not everybody's as interested in like the little policy changes as I am. But what other questions do we have? I know, did you say that there was another question, Amanda, about transcripts on Counselor Talk because Michelle and I have been working with our legislative team actually about like, are you talking about the requirement for the test?
Yeah.
Okay. So I promise you that Michelle and I are hardcore advocating to make sure that we get that adjusted because we just know how important that is, that we get that taken off.
I think in
right
the
now
statute,
it's just, oh, sorry. I posted in Counselor Talk. I just recapped what is in code now and just basically told schools to like talk to their own internal legal team to determine like how they want to interpret that code. But that there could be, like Courtney said, we understand that there's been changes, so we're trying to advocate.
Yeah. With Jennifer's question about a forum like Counselor Talk, we do not have a forum, but you can always email us at engagement@doe.in.gov if you have a specific question for us, and we can make sure that the right person gets it. We may also like look at doing we have our Moodle community as well. So if you guys want to join that, that has all like of our resources on it, all of, like the SEL competencies and the toolkits, that's all on our Moodle page. So if you are not on that and you're interested in getting on that, let us know. We can send you instructions on how to find that. Oh, here, let me I'll drop a link in the chat to like directions on how to get into our Moodle page.
and Courtney or Michelle or Rebecca, I know you recently sent out a contact list. It had like the CTE pathways email on it. It had your emails on it. Can one of you maybe link that into the chat too? Because that's a great document to save for future reference for any questions that people think of.
I can do that because I have it open, Courtney.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you,
cool.
Michelle. And then a couple of questions came in. Okay, you're attaching the Moodle, I think already, Courtney. Will there ever be a time with DOE, DWD, and CTE, all one entity, so we don't have 3 different organizations all trying to say what kids should have completed for graduation? Too many cooks in the kitchen.
I mean, let's talk about government efficiency for the next 7 hours. I could see eventually just like, and this is all pure speculation, like from my just like history and policy, I could see them moving CTE back to DOE at some point, and taking it from the workforce cabinet. There was just like some weird political stuff with all of the different transitions. And so I could see that happening at some point. And then, but DWD and DOE and CHE, I don't know. I mean, there was some, Representative Baining talked about like this huge, like, what did he call it? The Department for Lifelong Learning, I think is what he called it, where it was like DOE, CTE, and CHE, and maybe DWD included in that. I can't remember, but that would be like a mega agency. And so like, I don't know if I really see that happening so much, because to have somebody that would head up that agency, they would have to have knowledge across all of those. And that would just be like a really big government type deal. And that's just not necessarily like Indiana style, but like, I don't know, there's been talk of it, but we'll see. I will say to you that we are trying really hard at DOE, at CHE, at GWC to work in less silos. Like we started meeting very regularly to talk about all the different initiatives and start aligning language. So we're talking about the same things and just like updating everyone. So I will say, I hope that you see an improvement in that in the future, because everybody's really trying to kind of break down those silos and like get to know the different agencies and kind of eliminate some of that bureaucratic mess, if that makes sense. Elise, do you have your hand up? Do you have a question? But that's not Elise.
Hello, everybody. No, I'm not Elise. I'm actually stepping in her shoes today. But I do have a question
Yeah.
regarding, because I'm previously a school counselor, so this is good information for me. Concerning the bill, let's see, I wrote it down. It's HB 1251, the micro
Okay.
grants regarding the when you mentioned the teachers were able to work from home. Well, no, teach the students and be employed by the state. I guess I wanted more clarification in
Oh,
regards
the
to that.
parent teacher compact, is that what?
Mhm.
So that is right now, the only thing that they're doing is studying that.
Okay.
So I will drop, actually, if you guys are interested, there's a policy brief. And it's Excellanet is the one who's kind of doing this. So I'm gonna drop this in here, and it just like gives you more of an overview, because it took me quite a couple of hours to read through this and like really kind of pull out what it means. And it doesn't really mean anything specific at this point. So I just really want to reiterate that this is all like very much like exploratory.
Okay.
So they are exploring what this would look like in the state of Indiana. There will be a report coming out from the department that shows like how much it would cost to do this in Indiana, what the structure would look like, who would employ the teachers, because what we have to do is we have to work with all the different agencies to figure out like what this would even look like. So it's a very, very large report that is going to happen. But if you're interested, this policy brief like kind of just explains it on like a higher level of like what it looks like. And like, then this is basically just like a theory right now. Like nobody's practicing this right now. So it's not something that's like happening. Whereas like the only way, like, so we've expanded school choice in Indiana recently would be like through the education savings accounts. And this like takes it even a step further, if that makes sense, where like the teachers could like, we could eliminate the whole idea of a school corporation with teachers. So like, it's kind of scary.
It's very scary.
And so I expressed that concern in the meeting that like, I don't know, like I would not be like, so if I take my DOE hat off and I'm like my Courtney
as
policy,
a child, because I have a child,
or as a parent, I am also a
absolutely.
parent, this terrifies me, but because it is, but we have to remember too that like this is just like exploratory, right? So we're not doing any of this, and so but if you're interested in this, like keep an eye out for the report. I would guess, so these reports don't usually like get sent out because they're just like, we're reporting to the legislature like a study committee basically without the committee. And so but if you're like super interested in this, like let me know. And with you work at the department, obviously. So you'll see it. And if anybody else is interested in it, like it's public record. So like it's not like
very interesting.
It is. It's very interesting, and it's definitely something that like public educators are not a fan of. So yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. If you ever want to talk further on that policy, let me know, because I'd love to dig in deeper with that. Transcript question. Yeah.
Courtney, I'm going to scroll up a little bit in the chat just so we don't miss anything. There was a question about a monthly update from the DOE, which I know Michelle used to send one out, still sends one out, right? And I don't know if Rebecca's going to do that now, but that monthly.
We have actually been trying to shift more towards our information going through Sam's and Pam's, which is Dr. Jenner's weekly update. So the department is doing less individual newsletters from different like departments. So we actually are putting most of our updates in there, like that are big updates, and then anything else we'll send out via our Moodle page. So make sure you subscribe to our Moodle page. So we won't be sending newsletters as of right now. That may change because we do like to do that. But right now we were kind of getting away from that and more towards the Moodle community and the weekly update.
Okay. It could somebody maybe link in, one of you, how to get on the Sam's and Pam's list
Yep.
or the Moodle list? Okay, I think you
Yep.
already did the Moodle, so maybe
Yeah, the
that's already
Moodle's on there.
Okay.
I'll drop the link for the Sams and Pams right now because it's just on our website.
Perfect. And then Michelle shared that CTE memo was just sharing ways to meet the 6 hours of dual credit. It was a little unclear, but she said nothing has changed as far as the technical honors diploma goes. Another question for the grad pathways, 2 course CTE concentration for current juniors and seniors. Can the order of the courses be reversed? So rather than advanced life science animals, then ag business management, if a student first takes ag business management, then advanced life science animals, will that count as a concentration? So could those courses be flip-flopped?
Yeah, I don't think it matters the order, especially as we transition from the old to the new next level programs of study. But that might be a Tony Harrell question.
Well,
Actually,
and on the, oh, okay, go ahead.
it depends on the wording of the prerequisites, whether it is listed
Yeah.
as recommended or required. Most of them are listed as recommended, but if it is listed as required, it has to be done in that order. If it's not, then it's okay to flip them.
We actually had the IDOE do like a training for our team on NLPS, and they said during the transition, while it's not best practice, if that is what needs to be done, if some flipping needs to be done during this transition phase, that it would still count as a concentrator.
Okay. So for that one, check out the state approved course titles and descriptions, see if it says required or recommended. And then if that one specifically says required, maybe send an email to, would you say Tony Harrell, to clarify if that's okay for the time being. Okay. And then let's see. Counseling contacts have been added to the chat. Thank you. Moodle's been added, the engagement email. I shared that if you're a counselor leader, you can stay on the line a little bit after to have a conversation about what's happening this year for the Counselor Leadership Network. Let's see, do we have other? Thank you. Tony Harrell's
Tony's email, yeah, is on there.
Great, good.
I'll joke.
What other?
If anybody wants his personal cell phone, no, I'm just kidding. We love Tony. Tony would kill me, but that's why I say that.
What other questions does everybody have? We have a couple minutes left. Okay, we just got one.
Oh, grad report. I think that would be, that's Brenda, right, Michelle? Is that Brenda?
Oops. Yeah, that's Brenda. I can put her email in here.
Yeah, Brenda Erbs. She does the grad report. So yeah, we'll get you her contact, Jessica.
Thank you.
That could be like an
that would have been Maggie, but Brenda.
Yeah,
it might be an interns issue. Yeah.
Interns / grad GR report situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If Brenda doesn't know, she'll know who to have you contact.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
I was wondering if you have any advice. I switched roles in January and have tried to sign up for the CTE biweekly update. I probably filled out the job form 7 or 8 times, didn't get anything. Then there was a period of time where I was getting forwarded CTE biweekly updates saying you've recently been added and we've been having some issues. And now I stopped getting even the forward again. Any advice on that or someone I could contact?
I would contact Tony.
Okay.
Yeah. Send Tony an email to his like A Harrell and he should be able to help you because that would be through GWC, not us. So sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, since our time is up, I want to be very mindful of everybody's time, respectful of your time. So thank you for joining us. If you do have questions after this, if they are specifically for people who at the DOE could answer, please refer to that contact list.
Right,
And that will get you to the right person in the right place. Thank you so much, though, Courtney, for being with us. A few things before we end our session. Here on the screen, you will see the evaluation form, also a request for a PGP or CEU, if you would like that for your license renewal. So please be sure to fill that out, and I will link to it here when I'm able. But also wanted to share a couple of things, other things, really about upcoming events. So here on the screen, you will see several things that are happening. There's also a QR code if you want to link to that to get to our engagement page, our registration page. Just some highlights. Every month we will have free PD available, and you'll see some of those sessions here on the screen. We'll have accommodating transgender and non-binary students next Wednesday. That is a free hour-long session, followed by that next week, the duty to report child abuse and neglect. So what are the Indiana specific laws around that? Also free on September 14th. On September 22nd, we have an in-person networking event in Indianapolis. So would love to have anybody on the line join us for that. That one is a paid workshop. It's from 8:30 to 12:30. We'll have lunch and some learning and networking time as well. And then you'll see culturally responsive school counseling on October 11th, and then MTSS and the vital roles of student service professionals on November 2nd. So a lot of things coming up. Also, if you haven't seen our year-long series, I'm super excited that we're offering school counselors for MTSS. If you know Dr. Emily Goodman-Scott and her team, they're amazing, and they are going to be doing a hybrid series for us that will start in January. So the launch date for that series has moved back a little bit to January, and she'll go all the way through May, most likely, for that series. Otherwise, we have Restorative Practices Readiness for School Leaders. That's an all virtual series. It will be a 6-session over the course of the year, again, all virtual. And then a Comprehensive School Counseling Institute, if you're hoping to meet the bronze and silver carrying the torch requirements that are going to be launching this fall at the ISCA conference, then you can join that cohort for the Comprehensive Counseling Institute. With that, I will share just contacts here at the end. And again, want to invite anybody in a counselor leadership position, if you want to stay on a little bit longer to chat, network, then we will do some of that here for the next 25 minutes. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see everybody soon.